I was in middle school when the Lord of the Rings movies came out. Everybody was like, I want to be an elf. All the girls were like, I'm an elf, I'm so graceful. And I was like, I want to be a hobbit. Like, why? It's like, because I like food and staying home. So if you've been keeping up with the last handful of videos that Tavis and I have made, you could probably guess that we are fantasy nerds. I was probably about the same age as Pip when my dad started reading me The Hobbit, and it is one of my earliest memories of being read to, my fondest memories of being read to, and for me, The Hobbit is always going to be one of those quintessential defining books of my childhood. While I loved the adventure part of The Hobbit and dragons and Gollum and everything, my favorite part of The Hobbit was always the parts in the Shire. And it's the same for Lord of the Rings, it's the same for the Lord of the Rings movies. I want to live in the Shire. I always loved the concept of hobbit holes. I've had a lifelong obsession with dioramas and miniatures, and I knew this was something I was going to get around to on the channel at some point, but I also knew that it was opening a door that was never going to be closed again. But Tavis is okay with that door being open and me filling our house with dioramas of fantasy books and other things that suit my fancy.
Okay, Tia, that's enough rambling. The main structure of this project is made entirely out of recycled materials. I wanted to do that to keep the cost low, but also to show that this is something anybody can make. I used to make dioramas as a kid, and I always would just rifle through our recycling bin to find things that I could turn into something else. To get that classic Hobbit circle door, the first thing I did was use a can as my door frame, and then I used another can that was the exact same size and used our stamp ink pad to stamp it onto my cardboard to find the exact shape I needed to cut. Then I glued it down, as you're seeing me do here, and I cut it out to the shape that I wanted the front of my Hobbit house to be, and I gave myself a little bit of overhang on the actual mountain. I used the rest of that cereal box here to make the back side of my hill so that it has a nice hill shape, because as we know, hobbits live under hills. And then I used newsprint to bulk it out. This is actually our old voting ballot information packets, which is a really good source of newsprint that I kept lying around the house. The next thing I'm going to do is split a bunch of these tongue depressors. They're the thicker version of popsicle sticks. It would have been nice to have had coffee stirrers to do this, but by splitting the tongue depressors, I did get interesting shapes. Then they were glued down to that circle that I had cut out earlier, and then I cut them out using an X-Acto knife so that we have a round wooden hobbit door. Then I whittled it down a little bit more so that it fit inside of my can. Now I'm cutting up some more popsicle sticks. This time I am making a staircase, so I cut them to a tiny shape and then glued them together in a step formation, and then I was able to just stick them under my door, and it has a really cute little porch. I want to note that I didn't intentionally make this to any kind of specific scale, but I did do my best to think about the size that hobbits are and the size that their house and furniture and such would be in this environment. Just putting some baseboards on to hide where the cardboard meets the wood, and now I am smothering everything with Mod Podge. I used so much Mod Podge in this project, and I am using bigger sheets of that newsprint in order to make a smooth base for myself. Since this is mostly made out of cardboard and paper, I am going to be going in a lot of lengthy directions to make sure that this is structurally sound and that it's going to last for a while. I'm using more newspaper here to bulk out this section to give it a more natural shape. And now something interesting. Tavis and I decided that for this project, we were going to make our own flocking. One of the methods that we used is what Tavis was doing there and cutting up jute cord into tiny little slivers, while I am grating a kitchen sponge, which I have to admit is one of the odder things I have ever done for a craft project. This took a while, and we amassed lots of mess and little hairs and sponge bits everywhere. Then we took our gratings and cuttings, put them in containers, and put little bits of green acrylic paint in with them, mixed them up, and then you get this lovely flocking that is considerably cheaper than actually buying the big jars of it. Our first night's attempt with the cord didn't go as well. We had some clumping issues, but after that, I went back and made more, and we figured it out. So to add more strength to this project, as well as to make it look natural, I am mixing very fine sawdust from the inside of Tavis's bandsaw with white PVA glue. This is going to make the newsprint a lot harder, as well as give it a more sandy texture, and give the base a more sandy texture as well, so it looks like dirt and not like wood. This part of the process felt very reminiscent of icing a cake, which I'm not really good at, but it worked just fine for what I was doing here, with all of my different textures and amounts of glue. Then I set it to bake for several hours under a heat lamp. This project required a tree, so I got out a bunch of my armature wire and started twisting it together and shaping it to form a tree, very like how I did in my cemetery video, which if you want to see that whole process, you can go watch that video. I also decided not to bulk it out this time so that the tree didn't look lumpy, and behold, the tree does not look like it is made out of breakfast sausages, but actually kind of looks like a sapling. Once again, I am cutting up about 500,000 tongue depressors. I started this process by cutting all the rounded edges off, getting a nice clump of them. Then I split them all down the middle so that they were half the size that they started with. Again, it would have been nice to have coffee stirrers, but this also gives a good wooden texture. And then I cut them into smaller pieces, into about thirds, so that I had a ton of these little shards of wood that I then was able, with the help of some wire, to turn into fence. I am super happy with how this fencing came out, and it's really cute and really ties the project together. It looks like a proper Hobbit hole now. Then I took some gross paint water and slathered all of my fence posts with that so that they had a nice stain going. Then I painted my tree nice and dark brown. And then it was time to glue these in place. I wanted to glue them in place before I did the flocking. So I glued each and every single post down, also making sure to jab the end of my metal into my structure so that it has a good base to hold it steady. Putting the tree on, I put lots of glue underneath it and tried to build it up to make sure it was secure as possible. For the front of the house, I did the tissue paper and Mod Podge mix to give it the good texture. And here I come in again with my PVA glue and sawdust mixture to try and integrate the tree into the surrounding area, as well as to cover up all of that extra hot glue that I added. Then I went through and I painted every single part of this brown. It was already brown enough, honestly, but I wanted to make sure that none of the newsprint was going to be readable through the flocking, because I think that would be distracting. To do the flocking, you put down a layer of white glue, and then you kind of just throw your grass down on it. The mesh of this strainer was a little too tight for this, and so you see me at times just picking up the flocking and putting it directly on. I also had to do that a lot because this is a very odd shape and it's hard to sieve flocking on a vertical space. By the way, I also painted the front of the house. I don't know where that footage went. There are many times where I thought I was recording in this video and I wasn't, so especially as we get closer to the end, you're gonna see lots of missing footage and things appearing that I thought I had recorded, but it turns out I did not. In my messy background there, you'll see a sneaky mushroom house that I was building off camera simultaneously. I still haven't finished it yet, but when I do, I will post pictures on our Instagram, so make sure you are following us on Instagram. I'll put the link in the description. A proper tree needed foliage, so I used my bigger pieces of sponge and I glued them straight down to the tree. I've seen lots of crafting YouTubers use sponge foliage from a package in order to make this kind of leafy look, and I thought it was really neat, so I tried it out. I am now carving out of polymer clay a bunch of tiny, tiny pumpkins. This was not easy. I'm not used to working in such a small scale. Here I am crafting a flower pot as well. I spent a lot of time working on all of these tiny objects, and I'm not going to waste your time making you watch me do all of that when I still don't know what I'm doing. The last one I did over here was this cute little bucket, and I made a bunch of these gardening tools. Look at them. I'm really proud of them. I decided a nice bright yellow for the staircase and then painted the pumpkins orange. You may have noticed that there's also a little pop-out window that I never got any footage of me making. It is the top of a spice container, and then I just cut out a window and put some plastic behind it. I promise that the next time I make a miniature and use that method, I will get it on camera. Now I'm just putting the final touches of paint on this project, and then we are going to go take a look at the final shots.
So there you have it, my own little Hobbit hole. I love it so much. I always say that, which is good. I think being proud of your projects is an important thing, even when, it's not 100% where I would love it to be, but I'm really impressed with myself, what I was able to do, because this is my first time really doing any kind of miniature work. This is my first time flocking. This is my first time really building terrain other than the lantern, the cemetery lantern. I will say that my tree making skills have improved dramatically since the cemetery lantern, and I'm very proud of that. This has definitely opened a Pandora's box of miniatures that I'm probably going to be making for a long time. So if you're into that, stay tuned. I don't know how to say that without sounding like a robot. Taj, what are you doing? He's playing with the pumpkin seeds. Taj is playing with the pumpkin seeds from the club video. And it's really distracting. Being very cute, but he's also very distracting. The goal for this look was Hobbit Librarian, which is also just the goal for my future. I'm realizing now. Hobbit Librarian. Oh my god. Imagine what a library in the Shire would be like. As we speak, I am currently breaking in a pair of Doc Martens, so pray for me. Hello and welcome to Making Fun. Today, I'm going to be making... Hello and welcome to Making Fun. Today, we're going to be making a hobbit hole. Because you're on this journey with me. Right? It's not just me talking into the void. This is me pretending that, I actually get to interact with human beings outside of Tavis and Pip.
For size reference, Hobbit Hole is roughly cat-sized.